It was a tough 2024 for Democrats nationwide. In Washington, they lost the White House and the Senate. In Minnesota, they lost their trifecta. In northern Minnesota, they've now lost every House and Senate seat they held a decade ago, except for one. Senator Grant Hauschild of Hermantown is now the only DFL lawmaker still holding office in northeast Minnesota outside Duluth. In fact, he's one of the only DFL lawmakers representing a rural district anywhere in the state. In the wake of a lot of Democratic defeat, Hauschild sharing his vision for how the party can make a comeback, saying it's time to moderate and relate.
Your support is humbling.
Thanks for putting your trust in me. When we fight, we win!
Donald Trump has been elected president.
The outcome of this election is not what we wanted.
It's sad.
This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before.
It's been a radical shift.
It's hard to understand.
Hey there, this is Grant Hauschild. I'm the state senator from our region, here to speak with the class.
It's hard to get farther from the political spotlight.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Grant.
Than a cold January morning in Silver Bay.
How you doing? Nice to meet you, Sophie.
But freshman DFL Senator Grant Hauschild says the roadmap to return his party to prominence leads right through the most rural parts of the state and country.
You might be aware that the region is really shifting.
So days before the start of the new legislative session,
Okay, I'm gonna get a little wonky.
he's embarking on another trip through his massive district, starting with a stop at William Kelly School and a meeting with workers and union leaders at the nearby North Shore mining plant.
So I'll be sort of negotiating in those spaces.
Then off to a tour of an assisted living facility in Ely.
A lot of our long-term care population is down here.
Sure.
And finally, down to Hoyt Lakes to see the needs of the city's ambulance dock.
One of the things we passed last session was a sprint medic model.
Why is this trip so important to you?
It's important for me to go into my district, given the size of it. I have to go to the people that I represent and really be purposeful.
Much of that purpose can be found in a thread the senator posted on X shortly after the last election, detailing why he believes his party performed so poorly in rural Minnesota and America, saying in part, when we don't trust the very people that work in forestry to provide advice on environmental issues, that's a problem. And when small towns like I Falls can't provide core services like rural ambulance or updates to keep the water clean, you start to see how a focus on electric vehicle credits for the wealthy are dumb.
I think what's happening is that there are a lot of folks that just feel like their voice is not being heard.
Do you feel like the DFL party has forgotten about the rural parts of the state?
Where we're maybe missing the mark and the opportunity is on the sort of day-to-day lifestyle that a lot of rural communities have. How are we promoting outdoor recreation and ATV riding? How are we making sure that we're standing up for sort of the values that people have in rural communities beyond just the government services that we can provide them? We can do all the great things on the government side, but we have to make sure that we're focusing on people's quality of life and the things they want to do when they work and play.
In the last month, Hauschild announced plans to advocate for new ATV trail funding and is working very closely with Republican Rep. Roger Scraba of Ely, whose House district sits within Hauschild.
So there's no one else working together like Roger and I are, which I think is all to the advantage of northern Minnesota.
When I call Grant, it's not like, well, what do your Democrats want? Or this is what my Republicans want. You know, we work like, what's best for the district? I think the Democrats, and not all of them, but a majority of them, have become more activist and not legislatives.
It's that sentiment that led Hauschild and fellow moderate DFLers to form the Blue Dog Coalition. They say they're focused on working across the aisle on policies that serve all Minnesotans.
I've worked across the aisle constantly on what I think matters to my district, and I think that shows in the results that we've been able to deliver.
But not everyone is applauding the senator's efforts here in his rural district. Some Republicans are calling his Blue Dog Coalition the Lapdog Coalition, claiming that the so-called moderates are still beholden to their fellow DFLers.
Each had the ability to work more bipartisanly in the last 2 years. they could have stopped some of those very, very far left bills that came through the last 2 sessions.
Republicans had some not so kind words about that new Blue Dog coalition, basically asking, where was this moderate approach during the trifecta?
The truth is, I've worked across the aisle more than any other senator in the state. I worked on EMS in a bipartisan way. I worked on Social Security tax relief across the aisle. I worked on permitting reform across the aisle. I worked on stopping the sanctuary state legislation for the state of Minnesota. I stopped gun storage laws in the state of Minnesota. We should have you come testify.
Yeah.
Met with plenty of skepticism, Hauschild says he's determined to prove listening, bipartisanship, and a whole lot of driving are keys to his party regaining rural relevance.
I think, again, there are a lot of voters who are not loyal to a party. They're loyal to those who are going to listen to them and fight for them.
As for how non-Blue Dog DFLers feel about Hauschild's work, they elevated him to Assistant Majority Leader this session. The Hermantown Senator was elected in 2022, winning by just 700 votes.